نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. قال عز وجل في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ثم أما بعد. In the early days of revelation, in the early days of Islam, the state of the Muslims was very dire in the sense that their days were filled with persecution and hate by people who did not accept the changes that were coming with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's introduction of Islam. And the people of Mecca were not open to this change because they had a lot of benefit in the way things were before. The paganistic idols, the worship that they had, it was beneficial for them. And so when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came and people were following him, calling to a deen, calling to a religion that called for righteousness, uprightness, they were opposed to it because it was empowering people like the slaves. It was empowering people underneath the power. And of course we have exceptions like Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha and Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, who were people of higher status. But a lot of the early Muslims were not in the same situation. And so a lot of the slave masters, a lot of the chiefs, the people in power of Mecca were using their status to oppress these Muslims. A lot of them not having any power. They were being oppressed very severely. Some were being tortured physically, being prosecuted. Some people were being barred off their trade, so they did not have money. Some people were being, in the society, being blamed and accused of various things. Their reputation was being lost. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was doing two things. Not only was he trying to teach these new Muslims to make sure they know about Islam and they're learning Islam as revelation is coming, but he's also working on trying to see how can I help the Muslims by speaking to the leaders of Mecca. Now, people did not want to be seen speaking to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It was seen as rebellious. So after a lot of effort, after much reluctance, the leaders of Mecca, they finally said, okay, we'll sit with him and talk. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there's a lot at stake in this conversation. He's prepared and he's ready to talk to them, to try to convince them. Because if any one of these leaders of Mecca accepted Islam, so many other Muslims would have an easier life. They may not be persecuted and hurt physically. And so this meeting comes to take place. The Mufassirin, they differ upon who the people were, but we know from some narrations that people say that it was Abu Jahl and Rabi' bin Utbah and Sayyidina Abbas prior to his conversion to Islam, prior to the uncle of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ converting. And so this meeting starts, and he's talking to them about Islam, and he's trying to make sure to explain to them what is going on, what is this religion. And all of a sudden, an elderly man, he comes into the conversation. He enters the conversation and he asks the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I need to know about this ayah. I need you to explain this to me right now. And he's interrupting, and he's asking, and he's being very persistent. He's asking immediately, and he wants the answer right then and there. And what happens is, when you have people of status and power, when they're interrupted, they feel disrespected. And so when they saw this, they decided to leave the conversation. And so this conversation didn't complete. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not able to speak to them and accomplish the goal of trying to have one of them convert and enter Islam. And so naturally, you can imagine what a person's reaction is. You've prepared for this meeting with very important people, right? And now it doesn't happen because someone interrupted you. You and I, we would yell. You and I, we would be very upset, express our anger. Don't you have manners, this and that? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that's not his character. All he does is he's sad. He's not sad because he was interrupted. He's sad because Muslims' lives are at stake here.
And so this moment right here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes this as a chance to teach not only the Nabi a lesson, He's teaching all of us a lesson. And then a surah comes down in the last juz of the Quran. Many of us might be familiar with Surah Abasa. In the surah, the first ayah begins with Abasa wa tawalla. He frowned and he turned, referring to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's reaction. When this happened, he was upset, he was sad, and he turned. And when the blind man had come to you. So now Allah is giving us a little bit of detail, saying that this man, not only was he elderly, he was also blind. He couldn't see. He didn't know who you were talking to. It wasn't in his ability. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى أَوْ يَذَّكَّرُ فَتَنفَعَهُ الذِّكْرَى. And what makes you think, Ya Nabi, that this person would not have benefited if you answered their question? They came to ask you something. If you answered his question, he would have benefited. It would have purified him. He would have remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وما يدريك لعله يزكى أو يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى أما من استغنى فأنت له تصدى. And for those who think of themselves as they don't need Allah, referring to the leaders, that they think they don't need Allah, you're giving your attention to them. وما عليك ألا يزكى. And now he's consoling the Nabi. He's saying, listen, it's not your fault if they don't accept Islam. You give the message. It is upon Allah to give guidance. And then he says, وأما من جاءك يسعى وهو يخشى. And he's saying, and the man who came to you, yes'ai, he came striving. He had this excitement inside of him. He wants to learn about Islam. He wants you to teach him. And he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has this belief in his heart that this deen is true and he wants to learn. This is the person who gets attention. So this right here, brothers and sisters, is the topic of today's khutbah. The answer to two questions that every one of us needs to find the answers to in this life. The first question is, what is your net worth? What is your value? And the second question is, how do you define your self-worth? So your net worth and your self-worth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that the net worth of this blessed sahabi by the name of Abdullah ibn Maktoum, the blind sahabi, his value in Allah's eyes is higher than the leaders of Mecca. People who have money, they have power, they have status. But Allah is saying this sahabi matters more because he has in his heart, he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He believes in it. And so if you were to ask anyone in society today, what is your net worth? What happens in your mind? You start calculating, what's my salary, my income, checking, savings, right? All my assets, and you subtract your liabilities, and boom, your net worth. It's a monetary value. If you were to ask the students, what is your net worth? They say, I have a 3.8, a 4.0 GPA, right? Numbers. That's what we think of when you hear net worth. That immediately your mind goes there. When I ask you, what is your self-worth? To your mind comes, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I have this MBA, I have these qualifications, and it's natural. This is what the society we live in tells us. But as Muslims, brothers and sisters, our answers are very different. These two questions, our answers are very different than what normal people would say. And the first answer, the net worth. How do we define our net worth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this in the Quran as well. There's a story about a very blessed sahabi, all of us are familiar with him, Sayyidina Bilal bin Mu'adhin. And during the conquest of Mecca, when the Muslims had come back to Mecca, and they're now seen as a force to be reckoned with. They actually came back. They were kicked out of Mecca, now they're back. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Bilal to make the adhan. And as Quraysh, a pagan Quraysh, someone who was not believing, saw this. And he goes, I'm happy my dad is dead to not see this day. That a black man is going to make the call to prayer. Very racist statement. And he says something even worse, a very vulgar term, a very dirty term. He says, did you not find anyone but this black crow to make the event? And not only is he making insults upon a race, but he's also insulting the status that he had, that he was previously a slave, and that he did not have any status or title or family to speak to him. And then what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals, Ya ayyuhan nas, addressing people, not Ya ayyuhal mu'minun. He's saying, oh people, Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. Verily, we have created you from male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And we made you from different people and tribes so that you may know another. And I think as Americans, we can realize this a lot more because just looking here, there's so many different people from different places, countries, ethnicities. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He defines net worth in this next statement. What our net worth is. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. He says, verily, the most noble of you, verily the best of you, verily the ones of you with the highest net worth are those who are righteous. And he's defining what our net worth in this world is. And he's answering that question for us. That everything aside, what you stand with as your value as a person, as a man, as a woman, is your righteousness and your good deeds. And that's what you take with you. It's very natural for us to do things, and the khutbah is not about all of us sitting in a masjid all day and not doing anything. We need to be hard workers. We need to be educated. We need to be contributing to our society, to our local neighborhoods. But at the same time, what is the value that we measure ourselves with? What is it truly that you look to yourself and say, look in the mirror when you wake up in the morning, say, what is my value in this world? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us at the end of Surah Dariyat, He says, we have not created humans and jinn except to worship me. Allah does not need our risk from us. These are things we do for ourselves. And as humans, we have to remind ourselves that it's good, we need to be educated, we need to have good jobs, we need to provide for our families, but that is from Allah. That doesn't come from us. These are blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us. These are blessings that we have to thank Him for and then remember and reorient the compass, because the compass moves a lot for us. This life puts us ups and downs, and we move around, and we're busy with family and children and work, and so we forget sometimes, but it's to remind us that at the end of the day, what are my deeds looking like? What is my track record? How's my net worth looking like right now? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who see the true value of deeds and to weigh that as our net worth. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness so that we may be forgiven. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. And so we've talked about what net worth means and how we define it. And again, society will tell us many different things, but as Muslims, we believe in our heart that when we leave this world, that we take with us only one thing, our deeds. One of my teachers once said something to us, and he said, you're all young, you're going to college right now, and it's very important that you do well in your school, you study hard, your parents are doing so much for you to go to college. And I remember that resonated with me for multiple different reasons, and he kept talking about being studious, he gave me all these tips about how to study, and then he ended it with saying, but just remember one thing, you're promised one thing in this world. You're not promised that you will be rich. You're not promised that you will have a luxurious life. You're not promised you will even be successful in the dunya terms, but we are promised that we have to return to Allah. Every soul is promised to taste that. And this is not something to depress everyone. This is not a depressing thing. As Muslims, we understand it, and we know that this is a reality. And for children, we learn about this, that you prepare for the akhirah, that the real life is yet to come. And that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves that if you're promised one thing, why not prepare for that? And you could do that with everything else. This does not mean you leave your job and you leave your family. No, when you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you have taqwa, everything you do can become hasanat for you. When you go to work in the morning and on your way to the car, you say, Allah, I'm going so I can provide halal rizq for my family. Allah will reward you for it. When you come back home to see your family, say, Allah, raise my children as righteous and bring my spouse close to me so that we may be close to you. That is good deeds in Allah's eyes. When you are alone and you have taqwa and you remember Him, these are good deeds. So you can have good deeds 24/7 so long as you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for the last few minutes that I have, I want to talk about the second topic. So now we've talked about net worth and what that is. Now what about self-worth? And this is really important because we live in a society where our self-worth, our self-confidence is built on a lot of wrong things. Because if your foundation is weak, it's going to crumble. If your foundation is subjective, it can change, then your self-confidence can fall too. And self-confidence is that feeling in the morning when you get up. Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel good about life? It changes your entire attitude, your whole life. And so we look at a story where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sitting with his companions, and he draws 4 lines in the sand. And he says that these lines represent the greatest women of all time. The greatest women of all time. And this is in Sahih Ahmad. And he tells us the names of these women. 2 of them were his family. Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anha. Then we have Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. And then we have Sayyidina Maryam, daughter of Imran. And these 4 women are not just role models for the women in the back, but for all of us. For every man, woman, child, these 4 women have examples in their lives for us. And today in the short time that we have, we'll look at Sayyidina Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun.
And the story is something I'm sure everyone is familiar with about how Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Moses, when he was a baby, his life was at stake. Because Fir'aun, when you think of a bad guy, think of any villain in your mind and Fir'aun tops him. He was a cruel human being. Someone who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to very often in the Quran as an oppressor. If you think someone is bad, then trust me, Fir'aun is one step above that. He would kill babies just out of fear that he would lose his power. He would torture people who questioned his ability and power. He was the tyrant of all tyrants. And so his wife, Asiya, says that we should raise Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Let's raise the child. And she's under his protection is she raised. And then we know the story about how Prophet Musa alayhi salam leaves and he comes back as a prophet. And when he brings his message and he proves those sorcerers of Fir'aun wrong, and now people are like, oh my God, he's actually a prophet. And people start to believe this, and they're accepting Sayyidina Musa's prophethood, and they're accepting that he is from God, and that he's bringing a religion. Sayyidina Asiya sees this too. And when she sees this, she accepts Islam. Now you think about this, that a woman who has wealth, she has power, she's the wife of the most powerful man. She has palaces and kingdoms. She has beauty. She has everything that in this dunya you could want for. If you go ask any random person a list of the things that she has, they would say, this is winning. This is life right here. This is all you need. She has all of this, but when she sees the truth, she recognized it. And what does she do? She believes in it. And when Fir'aun comes around to find this, he tortures her so brutally, his own wife. Tortures her to the point that I cannot even describe it on the microphone because there are kids here. Horrible, horrible torture to her. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us? وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ إِذْ قَالَتْ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِندَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And this ayah comes at the end of Surah Tahrim when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have brought forth examples from you, such from the wife of Fir'aun, from the people who believe. And she says, O Allah, build me a paradise in Jannah close to you. And save me from Fir'aun and his actions, and save me from a people who are oppressive. Now let's think about this for a minute. You have wealth, you have power, you have status, you have everything anyone can want for, and you're asking for a paradise, a palace in Jannah. What does that mean? That means you understand that this life is transient. You understand that this life is temporary. Only if you have true yaqeen in the akhirah could you sacrifice such a comfortable life, such a comfortable setup that she had. She sacrificed it saying that that is the true life. She asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant her a paradise in Jannah. That is yaqeen. And so today when we think about self-confidence, people are building their self-confidence off of various things. The lowest level is what other people think of you. When your self-confidence is when someone says, oh, mashallah, you're a great guy, you're a great girl, you're very handsome, you're very pretty. If your self-confidence is built on this is the weakest layer. Because the minute those compliments leave, what happens? You need to seek it. You get hooked, right? And now we have the social media generation where you define yourselves based on likes. Who liked my picture? Who shared me? Who has seen what I'm doing, right? And your self-confidence starts to build on this, and it's very dangerous because then people go into depression, and they go into isolation, and they feel like society doesn't like them. They think people don't like them just because they're not getting that positive reinforcement. Then the second level that we have is people build self-confidence based on their own actions. And I'm talking, you go to study, you become a doctor, you spend 9 to 10 years studying, now you've accomplished something. This is a good thing, you feel good about it. But then there's also a flaw in this level of confidence where you're relying upon a status that is temporary. As a doctor, you may practice till a certain year, but your body will give out. As a businessman, you may be successful one year, the next year you may be broke. This can be temporary again. So building your confidence upon this is also very shaky. And then we have the top layer that us Muslims get an exclusive look into. It's exclusive for us Muslims, in which we have a relationship with our Creator that is different than others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has direct communication with us. And so if your self-confidence is based off your relationship with Allah, the investment that you put in, and you wake up and you say, I know my Allah is happy with me because I'm avoiding sin, and I'm trying to do good, and I make istighfar for what's in the middle. And that's your confidence, and you can feel good about it. Because that's something that not only in this dunya benefits you, with Allah's blessing, but you know in the akhirah, you're setting yourself up with the best investment. And if you attain the level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of these feelings in your heart, the depression, the anxiety, these things go away when you have love of Allah. Because Allah is the cure of all things. He can cure all of these feelings for us. And so once again, to recap, we have our net worth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. that verily the highest of you in value, the best of you are those with righteous deeds. And then the self-worth. We have Sayyidina Asiya who tells us that our self-worth is our relationship with Allah. If that is good, then we feel good about ourselves. If that isn't good, then we should doubt ourselves a little bit and try to fix it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very easy. He says, if you come to me with a mountain of sins, I will forgive them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy for us as long as we ask Him, as long as we lower our heads in humility and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. And these are the two things that if we really focus on, if you really work on identifying what your purpose is here and what makes you feel good about yourself, these two things will carry you a very long way. And as a youth coordinator, I often spend time with the youth and see these things and how they're trying to develop to understand, like, what is my purpose here? At 17 years old, it's not that easy of a question to answer. But they're working on it, and it's important for us to, as a community, show the love and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remind us that it incorporates in everything we do. Islam and life are not two parallel, separate things. They work in conjunction with each other. Islam is submission in every aspect of your life, at the office, at home, when you're alone. That is Islam in every component of it. And we have to constantly remind ourselves that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us remember Him very often. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive the sins that we've committed from last Friday until this Friday. We ask Him to protect us from any sins that we may commit from this Friday until the next. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those in this community who need healing, who have sicknesses of physical ailments or of the heart. We ask you, Allah, to cure it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this community for those who have troubles that we don't know. You know all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please help and alleviate these sicknesses and these problems for us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our youth, for the young who are studying, and for those who are growing up to guide them upon your path and the path of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those of us who have families to guide our families upon your path. We ask you to grant rizq to those who need rizq. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to keep us remembering you often and often again, and to remind us why we are here, and to bless us endlessly with your remembrance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lastly to make most beloved in our hearts no one more beloved than your beloved, more beloved than our family, than our wives, our children, anyone in this world. We ask you to make most beloved to us Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما اعطيت اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار اللهم حبب الينا الايمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره الينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقم الصلاة